You did not find yourself in this moment by mere coincidence. It was the divine hand that moved upon your soul, illuminated your understanding, and beckoned you away from the multitude. This stirring of your soul was never meant to offer a fleeting emotional spark, but to initiate a sacred detachment from what once defined you. This shift was not so you could return to your old patterns, but so that you might undergo genuine transformation. However, once the veil was torn away, and you glimpsed what lies beneath the surface of appearances, once the commotion faded into silence, what met you was not fire or fervor, but an unfamiliar stillness and a weighty sense of absence. You walked away from the constructs of your former world, the routines, the obligations, the pursuits that once gave shape to your days and validated your identity. Initially, it felt liberating, like emerging from a burning structure into the embrace of fresh air. But as clarity settled in, another feeling emerged. A quiet ache, a whisper of a question. Why does truth feel so hollow? You hoped for direction but received stillness. You yearned for mission but were granted pause. But do not mistake this for spiritual regression. This is the sanctifying process. You are not facing divine displeasure, you are undergoing refinement. God has not stepped away, He is drawing you into deeper waters. The emptiness you feel is not a void, but the absence of artificial energy. You are not shattered, you are under reconstruction, and the tools for this sacred rebuilding are not busyness or display, but quiet, calm, and yielding. Scripture never concealed this path. Moses wandered for decades before confronting Pharaoh. Elijah collapsed under the weight of despair before encountering God's gentle whisper. Job, stripped of everything, sat among ashes before declaring that he had truly seen God. These accounts are not about defeat. They are about the death of the old self so that the vessel might be sanctified. So if you sense a void, recognize this. You are not adrift. You are being made ready. You are standing in the divine pause between unveiling and commission, between being seen and being sent. Earth may lack language for this stage. Even fellow believers may not discern it, but heaven sees. And in the realms of God, this stillness is not passivity. It is a sacred yielding. It is not delay, it is divine intention. It is not vacancy. It is spiritual synchronization. Now is not the season to rush forward. It is not the moment to perform, or to earn, or to panic. This is the season to dwell quietly in God's presence and permit Him to dismantle every part of your being built upon false foundations. What comes next will not emerge from anxiety or pressure. It will arise from communion. And this communion is not your creation. It is your surrender. This is the echo of the Holy One, reaching for the soul He has set apart. Be still and recognize that I am your God. There comes a time in the walk of the chosen when the familiar structure of life begins to dissolve. It may not be loud, but its impact is unmistakable. One moment you're navigating life as always, driven by accomplishments, validated by results, and then a subtle shift begins. Perhaps it's the sheer heaviness of routine, or the uncomfortable realization that accolades no longer satisfy, that ambitions that once set you ablaze now feel eerily hollow. Or perhaps it's even quieter, a whisper in the dark declaring, "This isn't who you truly are." However it reveals itself, this awakening is sacred and undeniable. Your perception alters. What once enticed you now unsettles you. The familiar loops feel confining. The personas you inhabited no longer feel like home. You see through the disguises, both yours and the world's. The weight of inauthenticity grows unbearable. Your spiritual eyes begin to open, and illusion loses its comfort. This isn't worldly awakening. It's a divine confrontation. You're no longer sedated by distractions, and now that you see, you cannot return to blindness. C.S. Lewis, in his reflections on inner transformation, once said that an egg cannot remain an egg forever. It must hatch or perish. So too must we break from our shell. We are in the midst of such a hatching. This breaking is not destruction. It is the birth of divine identity. But here lies the tension. Awakening does not always deliver exhilaration. It often delivers disruption. It doesn't place you on a clear path. It first removes all the paths that were illusions. The spiritual high fades. What remains is a deep and unsettling displacement. The scaffolding that once supported your self-image begins to fall, not because you failed, but because God has pronounced it insufficient for your future. You are not being emptied as punishment. You are being emptied so something eternal can take residence. That hollow space within is not abandonment. It is God's personal invitation. He is calling you out of a life driven by effort and into a life grounded in truth. You're learning to walk without applause, to exist without proving, to live without being seen. This is the seismic shift, the realization that you're becoming someone who no longer mirrors the world. This is where confusion often creeps in. The drive evaporates. The goals that once propelled you grow quiet. You lose the urge to hustle, not because you have no aim, but because God is unhooking you from false direction. You're not apathetic. You are being reprogrammed. The engine that powered you has stopped. The fuel of human validation, ambition, and self-centered desire has run dry. In its place, only quiet. But don't fear this quiet, for in the eyes of heaven, this stillness is sacred soil. God has brought you into this pause so that you might finally hear what could not be heard amid the noise. This moment is not about inactivity. It is about preparation. It is not a grave of purpose. It is the dismantling of performance. True calling does not thunder into your life, it whispers, and the whisper is beginning. There arrives a sacred moment, subtle but certain, when God removes every artificial motivator from your spirit. There is no formal announcement. One morning, the things that used to energize you simply stop holding sway. Approval cannot move you. Fear cannot drive you. Pretending, striving, chasing. It all becomes foreign. Your soul has issued affirm enough, and your entire being submits. Initially, this may feel like failure. The energy disappears. The goals you once held up now feel like relics. You try to reignite the old passions, but no flame returns. This isn't spiritual death. It is divine liberation. What is being stripped from you is not zeal, but performance. What's fading is not direction, but facade. Lewis once observed that God whispers in joy, but shouts through pain. Our trials become divine amplifiers meant to rouse our souls. This unsettling emptiness, this pause in momentum, this is God speaking loudly through silence, calling you away from pretense toward lasting purpose. This disruption is grace in disguise. God, in His mercy, is weaning you off every false fuel, applause, reputation, productivity. He is not doing this to wound you, but to restore you. These sources were never meant to sustain. They burned bright, but left you hollow. They filled your time, but drained your spirit. And now your soul resists running on what once energized it. This is not malfunction. It is divine purification. The Lord is initiating you into a life governed by spirit, not by effort. A life led by peace, not anxiety. As the old cravings fade, new longing begins. Many misread this season as depression, but it is a divine reset. Your spiritual wiring is being reconfigured. Your core identity is being re-anchored. You're learning what it means to draw strength from surrender, not from outcome. To outsiders, it may seem like you've lost your way, but heaven knows you are finally still enough to receive. This is the end of counterfeit fire, the fire that burned you out while pretending to light the way. And with its end comes the collapse of the need to perform, to impress, to push. God is examining what drives you, not with condemnation, but as a loving Father who refuses to let you survive on what poisons your soul. And so you mourn, not only what you've lost, but how long you lived without knowing it was harmful. You grieve the illusion, the persona, the mechanisms that made you look strong while depleting you within. This mourning is not weakness, it is holy. It is a sacred ache signaling the beginning of healing. You are shedding what was never part of you, and though the letting go aches, it is sacred. Heaven leans in to whisper, I will give you a new heart, and I will place a new spirit within you. What once kept you moving was survival. What will now sustain you is surrender, and in that surrender a different flame begins, small but real, not for recognition, not for applause, but for truth. So if you find yourself sitting quietly, wondering why the things that once stirred your soul no longer do, know this, you are not lagging, you are being remade. This is not the absence of calling, it is the end of false fuel. And from these ashes, something timeless is rising. There exists a silence not born of God's distance, but of his overwhelming nearness. It does not feel like peace, and it does not sound like guidance. It feels like being left alone in a vast wilderness with nothing but your breath, your questions, and the memory of what once was. But this too is holy. This quietness you find yourself surrounded by is not a consequence, but a profound presence. When the divine chooses to speak directly to the depths of your soul, he first hushes all other voices. You are not overlooked, you are being cleared out. You are not under judgment, you are being made ready. God is not removing the sound because there is nothing to communicate, but because what he will reveal next requires an atmosphere of complete calm to be perceived. This stage of the path strips the soul of its longings and distractions so it might begin to truly hear. Not with ears tuned to sermons, affirmations, or outer validation, but with the inner capacity to sense God himself. That delicate whisper, barely noticeable, is only discernible once the turmoil fades. And yet the stillness feels excruciating. Once you felt led, now you feel alone. Once you basked in his closeness, now only your unanswered thoughts remain. Yet take heart. His silence is not abandonment. His voice is being sent on a wavelength your former self was never shaped to catch. He is calling you deeper beyond methods, routines, and rehearsed praise, to unmanufactured intimacy. What seems like dryness is actually a refining fire. Even Jesus, God's own Son, entered such stillness in the desert. He didn't hear jubilant shouts but utter quiet, and in that quiet he wasn't weakened. He was being fortified. When the Eternal is shaping something infinite in you, he often conceals his voice so your desire for him increases. He peels away what's outward so you might root yourself inward. The silence isn't there to break you. It's training your spirit to hear beyond surface sounds. When lesser noises are silenced, a sacred sense awakens. C.S. Lewis once reflected that we may avoid God, but we can never truly escape his nearness. He is interwoven throughout our reality, present even when hidden. His reflections in Letters to Malcolm hint at this idea. The world is saturated with God's touch, though he often walks unseen. This very idea brings meaning to your present hush. It is not lack, it is holy closeness veiled. This is your invitation to a deeper communion, a sanctifying process meant to shape you for forever. It's here your soul stops interrogating and starts listening more wisely. Not what do I do now, but what is God constructing within me, and not why did he leave me, But what is he leading me away from? Stillness lets you perceive what speed once blinded. You start sensing what you dulled. You start realizing what always mattered and what never did. This void isn't barren, it's sacred. If you can stay, resisting the urge to flee or fill it, you'll notice it. That faint movement of divine whispering, the subtle gravity of holiness, the Spirit's gentle pressing that doesn't shout but stays. This is where divine closeness is birthed, not in clamor but in apparent absence, so don't resist the quiet. It's accomplishing more than you can comprehend. To heaven, this is not deviation, it's design. You aren't drifting, you are being planted. What you create next will be as solid as the depths to which you let him dig now. Only those who have grown accustomed to the silence can carry the thunderous voice of the Spirit. There comes a sacred turning in the life of the called when God no longer lets you operate from compulsion. He dismantles the frameworks built on approval, performance, and praise. In their place, he commences a quiet internal reformation, mostly hidden yet fully divine. Society may still demand results. People may still expect the version of you they once knew, but God isn't calling for your productivity. He is inviting you into your true becoming, and true becoming is gradual. It's hushed, it's consecrated. It doesn't emerge from applause or spotlight, but from solitude. He's rebuilding your essence on eternal truths, not impressive optics. That's why your former passions don't burn the same way. Because the structure that once energized you was ego-driven, and anything built on self must collapse before what's birthed in the Spirit can rise. You haven't lost drive, you've been rerouted in purpose. The ego pushes for recognition, the Spirit draws you into surrender, the ego craves to be seen, the Spirit invites obedience. Before, your energy came from proving yourself. Now, it flows from responding to divine nearness. That internal shift may be invisible to others, but it's monumental in God's eyes. The weight of divine empowerment cannot rest on a foundation built for performance. It will always break, but the soul anchored in presence remains full, even in apparent emptiness. This is what God is teaching now, not how to accomplish more, but how to be fully present with him. His call isn't to dazzle, but to dwell, not to perform, but to walk with him in intimacy, like Eden's first man. He doesn't need noise. He desires proximity. This reconstruction isn't glamorous. It likely won't be noticed. On the surface, it may look like you're slowing, like your flame has dimmed. But truly, he is exchanging shallow fire for sacred oil, the oil that only comes through crushing. The oil of stillness, of wisdom, of consecration. You're not withering, you're being pressed into purity. The exterior might appear calm, but inside, foundations are being unsettled and set into permanence. And here lies a divine mystery. When God starts to rebuild, he may not immediately reveal a new mission, because this part of the path isn't about instructions, it's about indwelling. Before he releases your message, he restores your soul. He doesn't seek functionaries who impress, but children who abide. So if your schedule is blank, if your roles are fading, if your clarity has grown quiet, rejoice. This is not the death of purpose, but the shaping of your innermost being. It is the mark of trust. You are not being built to strive. You are being made into a sanctuary of presence. And when the moment arrives, you will move not by talent, but by overflow, an overflow born from divine closeness. Every soul God plans to elevate must first experience a death, not physical, but internal. The passing of the self you shaped for survival, for acceptance, for worth. These facades may have once protected you, but now they are prisons. That version, useful as it once was, can't come with you into a truth-filled future. This death is slow, a slow unraveling of the persona thread by thread. The character you once played crumbles. Your familiar names no longer describe you. Your old motivations lose their grip. You stand in the in-between, not who you once were, not yet who you're becoming. And it's in this fragile undoing that heaven leans close and whispers, "Now let me shape you." God isn't interested in tweaking the facade. He seeks to revive your essence. But first, he lets every false construct collapse. That includes performance, driven spirituality, image control, the need to be indispensable, the fear of letting people down. These supported your ego, but never your spirit, and God is after your essence, not your utility. This is the secret of true transformation. Before he sends you outward, he summons you inward, not to vanish, but to be restored. Not to impress, but to be made complete. Wholeness begins with surrendering who you are no longer meant to be. That means mourning, yes, even grieving the well, meaning self you crafted to cope. Even that self must bow. Even that self must fade. But here is the holy paradox. Nothing that dies in the desert is discarded. It becomes the foundation of resurrection. God never plants what he does not intend to raise. In this season, he isn't merely removing, he is unveiling. Not the you shaped by trends, trauma, or demands, but the you he imagined when he first spoke your name into the cosmos. This isn't a stripping of identity, it's a revelation of it. And though it emerges through flames, it cannot be unsettled, because it's rooted not in opinions or results, but in Christ. As Paul declared, it's no longer I who live, but Christ who lives in me. That is your truest form, not a role, but a redeemed being, shaped by closeness with God. And once you begin to live from that core, everything alters, not instantly, but irreversibly. So grieve the fading if you must, but don't cling. What is surfacing in you is sacred. It's concealed for now. But soon it will be seen, not for acclaim, but for divine glory. This wilderness isn't your finish line. It's your birthing room. You are not disappearing. You are being uncovered. The stillness you're experiencing is not an absence to dread. It is a doorway to enter. What seems like withdrawal is in fact an invitation. God hasn't looked away. He's drawn you behind the veil. He's separated you from the noise, not to reprimand, but to prepare you for a depth of nearness that can't coexist with distraction. This silence isn't rejection. It's sacred space. Many shout in their barren places, "Where is God?" But heaven's reply remains, "Be still. He's nearer than your breath." Yet this nearness may not feel emotional or cozy. Sometimes it is barren. Sometimes it strips everything until only one question remains. Will you still love him when he's not giving but forming? This is the test of the chosen. Will you be devoted when he no longer meets expectations but molds identity? Here your faith is formed. Here who you are no longer relies on reactions, but on relationship. Here your soul learns to worship without reason, to stay without signs, to trust without proof. Make no mistake, this silence is accomplishing something. It is removing every idol that sustained your belief system. It is laying bare your preference for gifts over the giver. It is detoxing shallow faith and second-hand convictions. God is not creating distance, he is deepening connection. He is quieting what is temporary, so you may recognize what is timeless. When you were surrounded by the crowd, your belief was fueled by clamor. Now, in the secret place, your faith must be fed by truth alone. No more chasing echoes, no more grasping at spiritual short-cuts. Just a stillness so profound it pierces every illusion within until only the truth remains. In this raw and sacred quiet, God is not merely delivering lessons. He is reshaping you entirely. And this reshaping is sacred. It doesn't scream, it doesn't hurry, it seeks no attention. It emerges gradually, much like the slow change of seasons in a garden no one else can see. This stillness, which some might mislabel as laziness or misinterpret as disorientation, is viewed in heaven as deep renewal. You are not late. You are beneath the surface chatter, beneath external expectations, beneath the relentless striving, where roots gain strength and sacred oil is formed. If you feel invisible, overlooked, or unheard, be encouraged. The quiet does not point to God's absence. It points to his invitation, one that calls you into a depth of closeness beyond words. Those who answer this invitation, those who settle into the hush rather than filling the space with sound, will uncover something richer than direction. They will find companionship. They will encounter a presence that doesn't solve every puzzle, but silences the need for answers altogether. Because what truly fills the soul is not resolution, it is relationship, and in the hush you'll learn he was never distant, only whispering. After the quiet, after the shedding, after the long stretches where not even prayers seem to stir the heavens, a subtle transformation begins. Not a blast of revival, but a steady and unmistakable change. The old blaze has cooled, as it was meant to. What rises now is something wholly different. It doesn't demand attention, but it's impossible to ignore. It doesn't rush you forward, it draws you inward. This is no longer the flame of personal ambition. It's the quiet fire of divine harmony, no longer the push of pride, but the pull of the Spirit. It begins deep within, a sacred trembling, a subtle urging to move forward, not from pressure to prove, but because something genuine longs to emerge through you. You're not lifted by anxiety now, but by resonance. Your pace slows, your motive clears. For the first time in a long while, you're led by purpose, not pressure, by recognition, not noise. This flame cannot be faked. It is the product of letting go. It is born not of effort, but of rest. And only those who have survived the silence are entrusted with it. Only those who let the counterfeit fires burn out can be entrusted with one that refines without destroying. This fire is private, steady, and unaffected by applause. It does not sway with mood swings. It stands firm through both tempest and shadow. This is not a flame for visibility, but for purity. It won't make you famous, but it will make you faithful. It guides your choices, not through old patterns, but new rhythms. You are no longer driven by outcomes. You are moved by obedience. And in this gentler cadence, you'll notice things you once forced now unfold. What you once built by striving now appears on its own. What you clung to in fear now flows freely, because its foundation is no longer effort but presence. You may not even notice the new fire in your walk until others begin to ask, "What's different?" You won't credit a plan. You won't mention a turning point. You won't parade your strength. You'll remember, you surrendered, you waited, you listened, and when the time was ready, God kindled within you a fire that storms couldn't snuff out. This is the living expression of Isaiah 30:15. Salvation comes through returning and resting. Strength arises in quietness and trust. The fire you now carry is not about spectacle. It's about permanence. It's not temporary. It's timeless. It was not birthed by people's praise, but forged through divine refining. And it doesn't lead you toward the stage, but into substance. Not into cheers, but into calling. This is the flame of the devoted, the sacred glow that rests within those who've laid down pretense and stood up in the Spirit. You don't have to announce it, just live it, and your path will become unmistakably clear. You have traversed valleys rarely spoken of. You've waited in barren quiet where prayers echoed back in silence and the skies stayed mute. You've experienced the unraveling of your soul, not as punishment, but as sacred design. You didn't run when the fire dimmed. You didn't retreat when your dreams collapsed. You stayed, and because you stayed, you now carry something invisible to the world, but weighty in heaven's eyes. You carry tranquility. You carry yieldedness. You carry the stirrings of the eternal. This moment right now is not the end of your awakening. It's the initiation of your transformation. God's work in you isn't paused. It's progressing. The quiet wasn't a delay. It was by divine intention, a sanctuary crafted by His own hands, not to make you weak, but to make you whole, not to bewilder you, but to cleanse you. The wilderness was never exile. It was equipping. Yes, it stripped you of the old, but it created space for the sacred. The tears were genuine, the questions were plentiful, but beneath the ache, something true was anchoring, something calm, something consistent, something eternal. What you sense now isn't lostness, it's liberty. You are no longer fueled by what once pushed you. The accolades, the urgency, the hunger to be seen, they no longer rule you, not because your passion has faded, but because you've tasted the presence of God. And once you've truly encountered Him, every false echo goes silent. The counterfeit loses its appeal. The noise that once demanded attention now sounds far away and hollow. You've heard the whisper, the one that doesn't drive you to perform but invites you to live from truth. Even if uncertainties remain, even if some questions still linger, hear this: you are not behind, you are beneath the surface where depth grows, beneath the noise where sacred oil forms, beneath the performance where purity is born. What God has started in you wasn't meant to make headlines. It was meant to last, and enduring things are not built in public. They're carved in quiet. You've changed, you were meant to. The fire within has shifted. It no longer feeds on human praise, but springs from inner alignment. It doesn't clamor, it flows in peace. It's not driven by dreams of greatness, but fueled by divine authority, the kind that only comes from knowing you belong to Him, and nothing else needs to validate your journey. The world may not understand your current pace. They may mistake your calm for indifference, but you've come to know better. You've walked through the burial of the old self. You've waited in sacred silence. And now the flame within you is not second-hand, it is consecrated. It belongs to you, and it is real. You don't have to hurry to prove your identity. You are the living evidence of it. Every breath given in surrender defies the lies that once shackled you. Every time you choose presence over performance, you declare freedom from fear. Each decision for obedience over outcome is a step deeper into the person God formed you to be before the beginning of time. You are not in limbo waiting for destiny to appear. You are walking it out, quietly, fully, steadfastly. So rise, not in frenzy but in fullness. Don't chase applause, follow the cloud, the same divine cloud that guided the Israelites, not by logic but by His leading. Your journey is not random, your steps are set. You don't walk alone, you walk with the same Spirit who raised Christ, and He hasn't brought you this far to leave you now. Let the world praise volume. Let others equate success with velocity, but you've been touched by the slow, refining fire of God, the kind that never fades, the kind that withstands storms, the kind that weighs heavy in the silence and moves the immovable without seeking attention. This is the flame of the chosen ones. This is the road of the consecrated. And when doubt creeps in, remember this: God didn't awaken you for a performance. He awakened you for a becoming, and you are becoming, not in haste, not by force, but deeply, steadily, eternally. The hush shaped you, the pause prepared you, and the fire now alive in you. It is not borrowed, it is not temporary, and it is not counterfeit. It is entirely yours, and it is sacred.